Hey everyone, Taylor here, and thanks for listening to the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. My guest today is former U.S. Senate candidate Ibra Taher. His background is super interesting, so I just had to talk to him. We talked about his campaign, interventionist U.S. foreign policy, the Saudi Arabia and Yemen conflict, and the public's increased political awareness. It was a great, insightful conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy. All right, I think we're good. Ibra, welcome to the show.
Welcome for having me. Thanks so much.
Oh man, I'm really glad we could put this together. I know I had some work obligations that prevented us from doing this as early as we talked about originally, but I really glad to have you on the show now. And man, I wanted to know how's life been treating you after the campaign. Happy Father's Day also as well. I know you're a father to three kids, so happy Father's Day, sir.
Well, thank you so much. As far as the live, well, I did not really stop doing what I've been doing before the campaign. It was with some modification. I'm an activist. I call
Mm-hmm.
myself an activist, meaning that I'm involved in politics and groups, attending like school board meetings, commissioners meetings, groups meetings, planning to do something about what we are facing right now. So that did not stop. Yeah, probably I took a break for a week, but that was it. Now is everything is heated again with what's happening. So this was my life.
Oh, we cut out for a little bit there. I
Are
missed
you
the
muted?
last sentence or so that you said.
Yeah, well, as I said, well, I just resumed my work in activism, and this is my life after the campaign.
And what kinds of what does that activism consist of? What are you out there doing now post campaign?
So I'm not sure if you're aware of my issues in my campaign, but I was focusing on three main issues. One of them is monetary and economy. The second one was with the foreign policy, and the third
Uh-huh.
one with the current unfolding authoritarianism. So right now, I'm involved in groups regarding foreign policy to call for peace, for anti-war policy, non-interventionist foreign policy, and the second one is the growing concerns from the government regarding civil liberties and other issues related to it. So these are the types of groups that I'm involved in, and I've been working on them for several years now.
Yeah, no, and I've seen some of your stuff on Twitter, and I watched some of your stuff from the campaign, the U.S. intervention in Yemen.
Mm-hmm.
Allied with Saudi Arabia. That seems to be something that you've taken a focus to. Could you talk a little bit more about some recent developments with U.S. involvement in that conflict, and like what's changed under Biden versus Trump, and like what would you do differently?
So I would like to just go back a little bit to talk about how it started. The involvement really in Yemen was not direct in 2015 when the Saudi-led coalition, which is a coalition of Gulf countries, decided to wage a regime change war on
Mm-hmm.
Yemen because the Houthis, which is a small group of people there in Yemen, overthrew the government there, and then the result of overthrowing the government was not accepted by neighboring countries. So it is an internal affairs that neighboring countries did not like. This is how the war started. They waged that war in 2015, and ever since the U.S. government involvement was only to sell weapons
Mm-hmm.
to provide intelligence, logistics, like refueling their planes, and providing a political cover for their crimes, because what they're doing is intervening in another country. This is a crime, like, according to international law. And also, they're killing a lot of civilians. Uh, Not really. I don't want to go to the other thing, which is providing extremists.
Mm-hmm.
The Al Qaeda forces in Saudis with weapons and funds to fight along the Saudi-led coalition. We know that because the news talked about it for years. So, not mention this side of the issue. Our involvement was just logistics and refueling. Now, Biden, what he did just last week is that he sent troops. So now, for the first time in 7 years, we have U.S. troops in Yemen fighting alongside the Saudi-led coalition, which is in itself a constitutional crime, which is impeachable according to the Constitution because it violates Article 6 of the Constitution that regards all the treaties that we've signed as a country as the supreme law of the land, which is an impeachable crime if you violate. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what Biden did right now with Yemen. This involvement means that they want to finish the job in Yemen. They want to end this war by defeating the Houthis, who are Yemenis. They have every right to overthrow their government, but we are intervening in such war. So far, the war killed hundreds of thousands of people. About 20 million Yemenis are in famine for several years right now. It is really a crime against humanity. It is a humanitarian crisis, and we are participating in it from the get-go. And now we have the troops. So this is a major event that has happened just a few days ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago.
And while you were out campaigning, were your non-interventionalist views something that you found resonated with voters there? Because I feel like that's something that like the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and then a fair amount of Republicans still. I feel like that's something where there's some common ground on.
Yeah, well, with the Republican Party and conservatives in politics, we did not really have that kind of acceptance to such policy, the non-interventionist foreign policy, because the Republican Party, since the Bush senior, they started to adapt that intervention policy, which is the neocons wing of the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
And it dominated the party for decades. But since Trump came into power, he talked for the first time about some crimes, war crimes that our government been committed. He talked about withdrawing our troops from Afghanistan and Syria. He talked about our meaningless wars. So that kind of rhetoric, and they call it rhetoric because his actions contradicted his what he was saying.
Right.
But that kind of rhetoric really changed the Republican Party. I'm in Oregon, and for the first time, to the end of my knowledge, the platform of the Oregon Republican Party right now has provision that about foreign policy that adopted the non-interventionist foreign policy. This was not really possible 4 years ago, but now we have it here in Oregon. So when I started campaigning, it was an issue that was not very popular with the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute I started explaining it and how it is mainly in violation of the Constitution, or how it is usually built on lies, such the lies of the WMDs in Iraq, or maybe the Gaddafi in Libya, and all of such wars and interventions. So the minute I explain these things, in addition to the economic impact on our budget, I see a lot of acceptance. Yes, I had hoped that I see more interaction with me, more really energy or power to stop it from them. I did not see that, but I see acceptance at least, which is a good thing, a good start.
Yeah, so you also ran for Senate in 2020 um, as a member of the Green Party, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I did want to talk to you about your ideological shift there, but also, what did you learn from that first campaign for Senate that you then applied to this one? Do you think having that first Senate run, helped you in any way in this race?
As far as campaigning, being a candidate, it's definitely helped me to explore what it means to be a candidate, what needs to be done, how do you campaign, and all of these technicalities. So definitely helped me on that regard. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the shift that many people usually are not really aware of, it's only a shift of party affiliations. If people go to my platform, even when I was with the Greens, and compare it to now, they'll see no changes. I know it is, some people say it is a big shift from a far left party to Republicans. But these values and principles did not change because I changed parties. The only reason that really kept me with the Green Party is my anti-war activism.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, 4 years ago, as I said, it was not really possible to talk about non-interventionist foreign policy with them. It was one of the biggest issues for me. So I chose to be with a minor party, and that party is not really um, consistent in terms of ideology. We had conservatives inside the Republican Party. My friend, for example, was a Catholic, but she's still a devoted member in the Green Party. So it's not really unified in terms of ideology. Yeah, the majority of them are left in terms of ideology. But people did not understand that it is diverse from the inside. Now, when I left, I was thinking about the practicality of being in a third party right now. A lot has changed. A lot of issues are very urgent right now. And building a third party that is not part of the establishment, which was the goal of being with third parties. I don't think it's possible right now in terms of the urgency of the issues. And in addition to the shifts that I've been seeing right now with the Republican Party, for example, the foreign policy, the Republican Party has changed in terms of foreign policy. We can see discussions about corporatism, which is the control of corporations on the government.
Mm-hmm.
This discussion was absent from the Republican Party, but now everyone is talking about it. This is a huge shift. This is what I think we need to enact any kind of change. So those are the reasons really that motivated me to switch my affiliation. And also, I was since I was like in the Green Party, I did not really adopt any liberal or leftist ideology. It was apparent from that point. So it was really easy to switch to the Republican Party because they have more in common in terms of ideology and culture. So this is basically the shift, the transition that people talk about when they discuss my party affiliation shift.
And you think that shift is mostly, or maybe not mostly, but in large part because of Trump's rhetoric? And do you think that those kinds of ideas becoming more popular in the mainstream will like aid in the creation of a third party? Because so many people are searching for one right now.
Yeah, so the search for third parties is, I think it's been happening for 10 years, maybe or more. The dissatisfaction from major parties has been happening for years. You can measure that by the growing number of non-affiliated voters, independent voters, who are not really affiliated with any party. It's been growing for 10 or maybe 15 years right now. So this is not a new thing. The Trump rhetoric um, helped change the discussion,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, the events of 2019, 2020, which is events that were major in nature, concerning the public health aspect with COVID and the economic impact of the currency and the printing money and the monetary system. These events made people really curious about politics. They paid more attention to politics. And when people start really paying attention to politics, they start learning about what is happening, um, the reality of politics, you would expect to see changes. So this is, I think, these two factors led to the changes in general with the public, but specifically with the Republican Party because they kept pushing these issues. So, in my estimation, these two factors changed the Republican Party.
So, what do you think it will take to uh, get more voters to consider voting for a third party? Because there's so many people, and I mean I'm one of them. Just as a voter that there's so many of us that don't feel quite at home with either party, but we feel trapped within uh, this political system that holds up the duopoly that we have. And so, we feel constrained by it, and a lot of people feel like they have to continue voting for Democrats or Republicans. How do you get them to become more open to looking for other options?
Well, this is, I think, the biggest problem that we have from the public. Yeah, I am now a member of the in one of the major parties, but I never told anyone to vote for Republicans just because I'm a Republican.
Right.
I I don't do that at all. Now, when people ask me about the governor race um, now in Oregon, because we nominated someone who's part of the establishment. She's a Republican, but she's one of the establishment people here in Oregon. When they ask me about voting for her, I advise against it. So I actively do that because my focus is issues, fixing issues, fixing our problems, not to playing partisan games as if it's a sport game. I don't do that. So there's a huge factor here when we talk about the public awareness. It is really difficult to penetrate because how can you convince the majority of the people that you can vote for whoever you want and do not really afraid of playing these partisan games? It is only a conception, but we cannot really change it. We are struggling with this kind of change, conceptual change. It is just awareness, it is a concept. But unfortunately, if you are not recognized by the majority of the people, if you are not leading the people, if you cannot mobilize the people, that kind of influence is not really possible. So some people suggested change in the way that we elect people. I mean, the election mechanism from single voting to, for example, star voting or maybe ranked choice voting.
Right.
That would help. Well, it might help, but again, the problem, the biggest obstacle is the public awareness. If they just realize that they have the power for change, if they decide to vote for third party, that change will happen. But that will, again, it's difficult to come by. This is a struggle. This is why we talk about sometimes propaganda, brainwashing, and all of these methods, because they are effective.
Right.
These methods can control the public awareness, and the public awareness is the essence of any change. We cannot really change it right now. We don't have the power to change it. So maybe someday we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it would all. I mean, yeah, because the change is not going to come from within a system that benefits from, keeping the status quo. So I almost feel like it would have to be some sort of like some sort of massive grassroots movement. I mean, something that was really driven by people, to really see that kind of change. Because I mean, it's just not really realistic to expect any sort of legislation to come through, helping out independent candidates or third parties or what have you. I mean, is the answer just getting that message out to as many people as possible, or?
So when you talk about public awareness, you're talking about the masses. Partially, just hammering on the issue, keeping the issue alive, talking about it as much as we can. Trying to gain one person at a time, it might help. But at the same time, when I was campaigning, now I expected that in 2020 really changed people. They've seen how the government is treating them and how far the government is willing to go to implement some of these policies. I had hoped that we can see a lot of change, a lot of interest in politics. Well, the result of my observation is, yes, there is a significant change, a significant interest in politics, but I was disappointed to see that the majority of the people are still not really interested in looking into their candidate and knowing what they are doing to them, or maybe learning about politics. So even after 2020, I called the harsh lessons of 2020. It was really harsh. Now the people are poor by 20% just in 2 years. This is a
Right.
huge thing, but they don't know about it. They are poor by 20%. Each American is 20% poorer than 2 years ago, but still they don't know about that. And they're not interested in knowing why did that happen. And they're not interested, even if they know why did that happen, they're not interested in taking action to prevent that from happening or fixing it. So that tells me that the people really are not serious about change. They talk about it, but they're not serious about it.
Right.
This is a huge disappointment for me. I don't know actually what to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, no, it's a really difficult problem to try to solve. I know we're going to be coming up on time here, so I just kind of wanted to ask you about two more things. You have a background in philosophy, studied philosophy in college, and I know that very much so influences your political beliefs today. I was wondering how you first got interested in philosophy and what caused you to want to pursue it in higher education.
Well, my interest was when I was a teenager, actually. This is when I decided that I wanted to be in philosophy, to study philosophy. The major issue that led me to study philosophy was the conflict, so to speak, between religion and modern culture. This is a huge thing. When we talk about public awareness, value system, um, we often dismiss the transition that humanity is witnessing from the value system that is based on religion to a value system that is not based really on anything that we are familiar with.
Mhm.
And what does that mean to society? So usually, if you want to know this is wrong or right, you would go to religion to know the principles, the value system. Now, at least half of the Americans they don't adhere to a religion. So what do we do in terms of value?
Mhm.
What is wrong and right? There's a huge vacuum, a huge void, and the society, humanity did not know really how to deal with it. This is a huge concept. So this is what led me briefly to get involved in philosophy because they talk about these issues. They discuss um, such issues related to society and religion and value system and ethics.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I thought it was really interesting looking into your background and seeing that philosophy background. Me and um, I actually had a buddy of mine on it in the last podcast. We both studied philosophy in college. So that was one big thing that stuck out to me about your race and your background. Um, you also went to high school in Kuwait, is that right?
Yeah, correct. So my family, my father lives here in in Oregon, in the U.S. My mother lives overseas. They separated. So I lived a huge part of my life just overseas with my mom and back and forth. So my school years, the high school and middle school, were in Kuwait. So I was exposed to a different culture. And my mom is Persian. Kuwait is an Arab country, so it is not a Persian country. But my mom is Persian who lives in an Arabic country. There was like a very diverse like cultures that I was exposed to. Um, yeah, that was my experience there.
Yeah, and had you ever visited before you moved there with your mom, or was that like your first experience going there?
No, it was always like back and forth all the time because they have family. I mean, my parents. So as soon as since I was a kid, we just go back and forth all the time. But when I went to school there, I remained there for 10 years. I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
come back here. So when I came back here, I lost. I started like having an accent. I lost my language because it was like a school year, like middle school and high school. It was still difficult for me. But anyhow, um, I regained it slowly.
No, man, that had to be an awesome experience, man, going over there and doing that. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to come on here. I mean, what's next for you? Are you thinking about running for office in the future? Are you going to keep up, with the activism that you've been doing? What do you got any future plans?
So I did run for a U.S. Senate race, which is a statewide race.
Mhm.
It requires a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of money too. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that without having better resources.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm involved in politics. We are working on a caucus inside the Republican Party. It's called the Liberty Caucus inside the Republican Party to push these issues. So this is what we are focusing on right now, me and my friend. Uh, Running for office is an option that we need to think about probably a year from now. I don't have any answer. and so far there's no plan to run for any office.
I know, I definitely understand, man. It takes a lot to run for a seat like that, especially a statewide U.S. Senate seat. So, whatever you end up doing in the future, man, I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be supporting the stuff that you do. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, and I really enjoyed the conversation, man.
Well, thank you so much. It is really my pleasure. And anytime we can talk with people, we'll do it. This is what we do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, take it easy, man. Happy Father's Day. Go spend some time with the kids. I'm glad your wife gave you permission to come on the show, but enjoy the rest of your Father's Day, man.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
All right, you too. That was my conversation with former U.S. Senate candidate Ibra Taher. I really enjoyed talking to Ibra, especially when we got into Saudi Arabia and Yemen and U.S. foreign policy in general. Hearing about his background was awesome too, from studying philosophy to living in Kuwait to switching parties. Whatever's next for him, I'll definitely be watching and keeping up. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bonfire Brief Pod so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks for listening.